Welcome to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few, US Pie's weekly podcast that empowers parents to reclaim their children's education from government bureaucrats and social engineers. In each episode, Sherry delivers the latest news from the front lines of the fight for the minds of the next generation, equipping you with the tools and resources needed to join the cause.
Hi everyone, welcome to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. I'm your host, Sherry Few, and today we're diving into a powerful conversation about how the federal government has targeted parents who dare to speak out against indoctrination in public schools. My guest is Kelly Walker, founder of Freedom Talk, who recently helped deliver a 35-page dossier to Congress documenting instances of government overreach. He's been personally involved in exposing how agencies like the DOJ have been weaponized against everyday moms and dads. Stick around, you don't want to miss this. Before we dive in, please give us a 5-star rating or a thumbs up and subscribe so you will never miss an episode. And visit uspie.org to learn more and join the movement.
Today's episode is brought to you by U.S. parents involved in education. U.S. Pie's mission is to empower parents and local communities to break free from federal and national influences, thereby reclaiming parental authority over their children's education. For more insights from U.S. parents involved in education, connect with us at US Pie on X and Facebook. To join the movement, visit uspie.org.
Welcome back to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. I'm your host, Sherry Few. With me today is Kelly Walker, an American entrepreneur, writer, and activist dedicated to preserving freedom. He's the founder of Freedom Talk and Freedom Talk magazine, and his work has been featured in major outlets like the Washington Times, Newsmax, Town Hall, the Epic Times, and more. Kelly is also one of the co-organizers behind the Parents Demanding Justice Alliance, which recently delivered evidence to Congress showing how federal authorities are targeting parents who speak up at school board meetings. Kelly Walker, welcome to the show.
Very great to be here, and thanks for having me on. I know we have a mutual friend in Sam Sorbo, so the friend of my friend is my friend.
Amen. Yes, and I'm so glad that Sam connected us. She's sort of a regular guest, and we've collaborated on several things. So I'm really pleased to see the work that you guys are doing, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to highlight it with our audience. Before we get into what's happening on the national scene, tell me a little bit about yourself and how and why you founded Freedom Talk, and about government overreach and how that's really opened your eyes.
Sure, absolutely. And relevant to your show, I actually, when I got my bachelor's degree, I had a minor in education. My first job after graduating, before I went into my master's program, was as a bilingual teacher on the border of El Paso and Juarez, Mexico. I'm bilingual, and also, prior to that, I taught overseas in the country of Sri Lanka for a year. So education has been very important to me, and I've had 5 kids. They now range from 24, believe it or not, down to almost 10.
Mm.
And I've done a lot. I volunteered in my kids' schools. We homeschool now. My oldest son, when his teacher wouldn't hold him back in kindergarten, and I realized she really wasn't teaching for boys because they're not good at sitting doing worksheets all day. So I said, no, I don't want you to hold him back. And I tutored him over the summer, and he started first grade ahead of the curve. So I'm very much a proponent of what you're talking about. And I have seen the school districts and the unions. I've seen them really behave in an inappropriate manner, to put it mildly. I've seen indoctrination come into the schools. I've been persecuted because for a time I was a single father, a very responsible, loving father, and there are stories behind that. But beyond that, I remarried in 2011, and my wife and I have had 3 kids together. So they are now, gosh, almost 13, 11, and almost 10. And we moved in 2017 from Bend, Oregon, partly because, we weren't very political, but, we're taking our kids to school. We're just kind of living in society. But things got so bad with just, I'd say, radical leftist dogma and persecution on me as a father. We moved to Tucson, Arizona in 2017, really to have a quiet life, to start over, to kind of get out of that harsh environment. And we were there for a while. I was working, and we opened a coffee shop in October of 2018, and we were open just about a year, and the whole COVID thing started. At the time, I was working as editor in chief for a national medical publication for a medical education company out of Seattle. And one of my jobs was to listen to webinars by some of the nation's top doctors and then write continuing education questions for other doctors and dentists and practitioners around the country. So, literally, one of the doctors was a colleague of Anthony Fauci, knew him on a first name basis. And I watched as at first they were very accurate because I have a Master of Science degree and I understand the science, microbiology. I watched them be very honest about the severity of the virus, that it was going to be pretty low impact unless you were elderly and had a pre-existing condition. It wasn't going to be dangerous to kids. We knew everything about it. I mean, they had the genome mapped on this virus early on. And then I watched it get political, and I watched them hide the truth and hide the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine, for example. And that's when really I'd say you might say I became an activist. I think of it, I don't really like the word. I think of it more as a guy who's trying to do the right thing. So come 2020, we had this coffee shop. We were not overtly political. We had an American flag in the window. We did back the blue events and that kind of thing. And Pima County targeted us deliberately, knowingly, fraudulently, as being out of compliance with their silly COVID resolution. Well, we had never failed an inspection. They set us up. So one day I came to the shop. We were getting all kinds of hate mail, you might say, fake reviews, nasty comments on social media, phone calls to the shop threatening to kill our baristas, threatening to murder my family,
Mm.
doxing, all the rest. And I thought, what is going on here? Well, some people sent me screenshots and they said, "Are you aware that you're on the Pima County Wall of Shame?" I said, "Well, what's that?" Well, they had implemented this inspection program where anybody could go into any business and say, "I don't think they're keeping the COVID regulations right," and report them. Nobody came out to inspect. They just put us on the list. And it turned out later we found out it was Ramon Valadez, who was at the time the chair of the board of supervisors, who put in a false report. He'd never been to our shop. They did it basically to make an example out of someone. I emailed the board of supervisors, and one of the two Republicans that were on the board of supervisors that were actually honest, he invited me to the board meeting, and it was going to be virtual because at that time they were virtual. And we found out, no, this one's going to be live. So we literally went down from his office into the meeting room. All the meetings after that were virtual. So, it was a setup. Within 30 seconds, I was invited to speak, and you get 3 minutes to speak as a citizen. Within 30 seconds, I was surrounded by actually some of the top people in the sheriff's department, handcuffed and booked for disorderly conduct simply for speaking. It was an egregious violation of civil rights and free speech. And we found out later that they had been sitting in the back with the county attorney saying, "Can we arrest him now? Can we arrest him now? Like, he's not wearing a mask. Can we arrest him now?"
Wow.
So, and I'm skipping steps because otherwise we could be here all day. But the upshot was that this was televised. I didn't realize it would be. I had no idea I'd go there and get arrested. And by the next day, we had lines out the door. The story was spreading around. And as a result of all of that, our shop became this place where people went for sanity and freedom. And so we opened up our shop. Actually, first of all, during the lockdowns, we became a food bank. When they closed down and said we can only do to-go orders, we took the toilet paper out of the restrooms in our shop because the public wasn't using it, put it out on a table, and literally, we had a woman come in crying, say, "How much for the toilet paper?" I said, "No, it's free. You can have it." She started crying because she thought, wow, somebody actually gave me toilet paper. I mean, what a strange world we lived in. But people started coming in to get their coffee, and they saw that, and they would leave things. We added more. We had some canned goods and things. So we started out with one of those long folding tables partially filled, and we ended up with five. And the food bank itself shut down, and we became the food bank. We became a place where people would meet when the churches shut down. All the people who didn't want to be forced out of their jobs to get an experimental so-called vaccine came to our shop. Military, fire and police, medical. I mean, we became like the Green Dragon Tavern, the place you go to
Mm.
have some freedom and to meet and to figure out how to fight back. Well, That first arrest was dismissed just days later. Everybody knew it was a false arrest. They knew it was political intimidation. And meanwhile, I started Freedom Talk because I realized, we have to have a voice for sanity. We have to remind people what our country was founded upon. I knew the science. I knew what was going on. I saw the traces of Marxism and what was happening. And there are a lot of just very interesting experiences. Someday I've got to write a book. But flash forward almost a year, and April 26th of 2021. So the original arrest was September 15th, 2020. By April 26th of 2021, we had a large group of parents meet in our shop, and we all decided we're going to go to the Vale School District Board meeting because people had been coming in for months, Sherry, saying these COVID policies keep, having kids stay home. They closed the schools for about, gosh, for a long time. They closed the schools unnecessarily. But even when they started letting students go back, they would tend to quarantine kids without symptoms. And typically it was the kids who weren't going to wear masks to school. And people were coming saying, look, these COVID policies are driving kids to suicide. And I had been writing about this before I was politically terminated from that job I told you about. I had been writing about how kids not going to school anymore, not being able to go to the doctor or the dentist, there was no one to see the signs of child abuse. So think of a dentist. A kid comes there, he's got lacerations in his mouth, bruises on his face. They're in a position to report that. That was all gone. But also kids who were living in abusive environments, suddenly they're trapped in their homes. Same with spouses who were abused. And so I was writing about this, peer-reviewed articles about it, but also we were saying this in the community, and I was communicating to the Vale School District and other districts saying, look, people are coming to us saying this is driving our kids to suicide. You gotta sit down with them and talk to them. You got to moderate these policies. Well, so April 27th, the day after we met in Viva Coffee House, over 200 parents showed up at a school board meeting. And that's a long story, but they tried to shut down the meeting. They tried to deny them entry. I was the first person in, and we just made a stand and said, look, you're not gonna deny these people a chance to speak. You've ignored them for so long, and kids are dying. It made national news when the parents finally came in and they noticed that the board was absent, so they swore in a new board from among the parents. I knew it wouldn't take, they weren't just going to roll over for this, but I thought it was a valiant effort. So everyone around the country saw this and said, wow, that's how you do it. Like, they came in and they swore themselves in for the board, and they said, we're not going to take it anymore. So this is when you really started to see in Virginia and other places, parents really coming publicly to the school boards. And really a lot of that started, at least in the public eye, right there in Little Vale, Arizona, which is a kind of an unincorporated part of Tucson. And uh, I found out later through a sheriff's lieutenant who would come to our shop that John Caruth, the superintendent of schools there, had contacted him and his department even prior to the school meeting, and wanted them to profile me. And this is very, very unfair. They said, he's going there, he wants to get arrested, he wants likes and clicks and whatever, which is nothing like what I stand for.
Hmm.
um and his crew, he told Caruth, he said, this is the Soviet Union. He turned around and told his guys, he said, you're going to see Kelly Walker, he's a big guy, he's going to stand his ground, but he is not dangerous. Just, and his crew, his sheriff's officers, handled it beautifully. They didn't take sides. They didn't act like security guards for the school board. They just basically said, as long as these people are peaceful, they have a First Amendment right to speak, which was kind of the exception rather than the rule of what people were experiencing, not only there but around the country. So the next day, and I'll just say that the administration was hostile. They were insulting to parents. They tried very hard to keep them from speaking. And there's a reason why. It's because they were getting millions of dollars from the CDC to keep force masking kids, to keep these just incredibly harmful, destructive policies in place. And they didn't want these parents spoiling that. And their view was, well, we're coming on the end of the year. Let's just write it out. But meanwhile, kids are committing suicide. A young man in our neighborhood went out in the desert just outside our neighborhood and shot himself in the head.
Mm.
And it turned out later he saw the police coming to collect him, and he said, I'm never going back there. And he shot himself in the head because he had no place to go. He had no school to go to. He felt trapped. And what did John Carruth do? He should have said, okay, we're going to sit down. We're going to have a town hall. We're going to see what's going on here. We're going to talk to these parents. He didn't do that. He not only ignored the parents and tried to silence them, he then demonized them. He started going out to the media claiming that these parents were violent and dangerous. He colluded with Merrick Garland. Think of the dates, because this was September 27th. Uh, by October 4th, well, prior to October 4th, the National School Board Association sent a letter to President Biden claiming that parents across the nation were dangerous potential terrorists. Merrick Garland ran with it. By October 4th, he issued the now famous memo, basically designating Patriot Act resources against parents, putting a threat tag on them, and calling them domestic terrorists. And not only did they do this in a letter, they then collaborated with local law enforcement to persecute these parents, to arrest, to jail, to fine, to ruin parents' lives. It was a political intimidation campaign, and I was one of them. Um, by September 2nd, after all this had happened, oh, actually, no. Sorry, the April 27th, the where October 4th comes in close is that September 2nd, I was arrested for going and sitting in a school principal's office with a father whose son had been forced to wear a mask. The kid threw it in the trash, and they made him pick it out of the dirty trash and put it back on his face. The father was livid. He called me because by now, I'm kind of the community go-to guy, where people said, I need help. And I went there with another father. So there were three of us sitting in an office meeting, and this father called the police and said, I want to report child abuse. They've done this to my son. They refused to come out. They said it was too controversial. 3 days later, they hunted each one of us fathers down, and 5 police officers showed up at my house on a Sunday night and delivered a paper ticket for misdemeanor through trespassing, which is literally just a little more severe than a parking ticket and less severe than loitering. 5 police officers. You talk about intimidation. And so the police refused to come out on a complaint about child abuse, and yet they hunted us down. And the officer who handed me the ticket didn't know why he was there. He had no probable cause. So I got the timing a little bit wrong. The April meeting was well before the October 4th memo. However, uh, this arrest of me and these other two fathers closely coincided on those dates. So again, it was John Carruth pushing those false arrests. They went out immediately to the media and pushed a false narrative with this principal, who, by the way, is about as big as I am, going out and crying in front of the camera about these big, scary men. The whole thing was at the level of Jussie Smollett. It was patently ridiculous. We have a video of the entire incident, which shows that we didn't do anything but sit and talk. And yet, this principal claimed that we had tried to arrest her, tried to zip tie her, stormed the school. None of that was true. And so each of us fathers ended up being arrested, not jailed, but had trial dates set. Now, the father whose son had been treated so poorly, he had a pretrial hearing on orders of protection. And Judge Antonio Riojas, who I'd like to call possibly the only honest judge in Tucson, he watched the video, and I have a recording of this. It's at realfreedomtalk.com. You can listen to it. He said, I watched the video. You didn't get up. You didn't stand. You didn't get in their faces. You didn't yell. He said, all you did was disagree with the way the school is handling things. That's their job, and you get to disagree, and they don't get to tell you how. So he actually turned to the district staff and reprimanded them and said, you don't get to tell them how they disagree. And he dismissed the orders of protection. So we all thought, well, that bodes well for our cases. And my lawyer said, look, we've got a video of the whole thing. All we have to do is get this in front of a judge. Because by then they had piled on to misdemeanor through trespassing, disrupting an educational institution, disorderly conduct, and another one I forget. But they started stacking charges on. Now, if I had done the things that they claimed that I did, or any of the other fathers, we would have been facing felony charges. We would have been arrested for kidnapping. We would have been given bail. We were never jailed prior to trial. So imagine this: each of us are in three separate trials. These other two fathers are let off with plea deals and small fines, unsupervised probation, which means nothing. Me, I sit in court for 3 days as they're tearing me down, calling me from the beginning the criminal and the other side the victims, which there's no presumption of innocence there. It's a bench trial. I get sentenced to 100 days in jail and over $10,000 in fines. And arguably, I did less than the other fathers. I literally sat and talked. One of the charges, as I said, was disrupting an educational institution. We have an email John Caruth sent to all the staff the day after this incident at the school saying, this incident was resolved peacefully. The learning environment was not disrupted. The judge would not allow that email as exculpatory evidence. And John Caruth sat up there on the stand and lied. My lawyer said, "Did you write this?" And he said, "Oh, I don't know. I can't remember." And my lawyer said, "Come on, you wrote it. We have this. We know." It was an absolute kangaroo court trial. It was a travesty of justice. I realized from the beginning that this judge was going to try to throw me in jail. My lawyer said, I've never seen anything like this before, never seen. But, go back to that history. I had a platform, I had a voice, I was defending people. That's the last thing they wanted. They wanted people in submission, they wanted people socially distanced, they wanted people silenced. So they went after me. And as my wife likes to say, they chose the wrong target because I got convicted of these bogus charges, but in the media worldwide, I mean, I had CNN, MSNBC, everybody calling me as if I was some sort of terrorist. And the judge ordered me to scrub my social media and never talk about these things again. Well, I only got louder. We ended up moving partly for work, but partly because now the threats increased. We got letters to our house saying, I'm going to handcuff you, rape your wife in front of you, murder your kids in front of you.
Wow.
It's not going to be when you expect it. It's going to be in the middle of the night when you think everything's fine. To our home mailbox. And then somebody started weaponizing Child Protective Services trying to take our kids. So we just said, we're going to move closer to Washington, D.C. because that's where things are taking me. And we can't stay here anymore. You come after our children, that's it. So we came out to Tennessee, and by this time, I have a conviction. I'm supposed to go to jail. But I was in the appeal period. Meanwhile, we sold our home, and suddenly we found out that there's a lien on our home. We can't sell it. So we looked into it. It was because of the arrest. And so we had to hire a lawyer, $3,000 in. He finally gets it to close. But they took $10,000 out for these court fees or fines or penalties. And our lawyer said, that's against the Arizona Homesteading Act because unless they make $250,000 or more equity on their home sale, you don't get to take that. And they said, we don't care. We don't consider it his homestead. It's like, what? The home we have chickens and a garden and we're buying that now we've lost. And it was just breathtakingly corrupt at a level you could hardly believe. They just did what they wanted to do. And, you know, I had this, I don't know, if you're a believer, you'd say God kind of nudged you or urged you to do things. First of all, kicking the health inspector out of our shop was the big thing where I did that and I was like, what the heck did I just do? Because we're used to being law-abiding citizens. Well, I started getting this strong feeling of don't appeal because it's going to put your family through that hell again. My lawyer said, you're absolutely going to win hands down. This is an absolutely crooked verdict. Um, I said, now, I've had to move. I'm between jobs. Like I got canceled out of my good job, my career. And I realized they win either way because if I win the appeal, still it turned out to be exactly $10,000 a law firm wanted on retainer to even appeal this. So I started praying about it. I started studying. I studied the words of the founding fathers. I went even back to Cicero, like the Roman foundations behind our founding, John Locke. And I realized that from Cicero on to Thomas Jefferson, it was a clear message that not only do you have the right to disobey unjust magistrates, you have a duty to do so. And I
Mm.
said, I'm not going to put my family through financial hardship of appealing. And by the way, when I was in court, my lawyer said, Mr. Walker's the sole wage earner for his family. This is going to put him in hardship. Why don't you just do probation? She refused because they wanted to silence me. They wanted to put me away and silence me. And I saw that Samuel Adams and John Hancock, Governor Gage of Boston, first tried to bribe Samuel Adams with a really nice, rich position, and then threatened him, and then put out a warrant for his arrest. And they defied the warrant. And Samuel Adams told a messenger from Governor Gage, "Tell Governor Gage I have long ago made my peace with the King of Kings, and it is my advice to him to no longer offend the sensibilities of an already exasperated people." And I said, if there's anything that the American people are right now, it's exasperated. And probably taking more courage than I would naturally have, I decided I'm not going to appeal and I'm not going to go to jail. I'm going to go to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to take on the whole lot of them. Because by this time I was communicating with a lot of parents. I knew a parent from Sahuarita, Arizona, who was arrested prior to my arrest, and she was put into jail for 5 days to quote unquote make an example of her and send a message. And what was her big crime? She didn't want to leave the office until they gave her a documented reason why they were quarantining her healthy child, which she had a right to do. Which, by the way, this father, where I sat in an office meeting, as soon as he got that information, he left. I had contacted then State Senator Kelly Townsend and this sheriff's lieutenant and said, how do I advise him? He said, get the documentation so you can appeal this decision to the Superior Court and then leave. So I turned around. You could see it on the video. I turned around and told him that. So I wrote an email, and I had been posting about all of these things. I had been active in it, and I sent an email to a number of members of Congress. Within a couple business days, Jim Jordan's chief of staff called me and said, Representative Jordan has assigned a team of 4 of us to look into this. We want you to send all the information you have. And I ended up leading a coalition up to Washington, D.C. that included Seek Smith of Mom and Dad Army, and several others. And this is kind of when Sam and I got in touch. And Sam wanted to go. She wasn't able to make it, but we had her support on that. So we met with representatives from Andy Ogles from Tennessee, my good friend Eli Crane from Arizona, Representative Andy Biggs, Representative Paul Gosar, and Jim Jordan, and laid it all out. There's a report, you can find it at realfreedomtalk.com, that Jim Jordan and the Judiciary Committee put out about the weaponization against parents. All fine and good. They've got the information, but where do we go from here? Well, we keep fighting, we keep advocating. And meanwhile, we're struggling to get back on our feet because we've lost everything. I mean, we had to live off what equity we had left of our home after they stole $10,000. And it's been really, really difficult because now we're renting a place, which isn't the end of the world, but even trying to get a rental, we got denied because I'm so-called terrorist, right? So we had to find friends of friends who would rent to us. I'm applying for jobs, mysteriously I don't hear back. Is it because I'm smeared all over social media? You apply for a job and just hope they won't Google you, or is it because, they do a background check and I'm just this terrible person, right? For doing the right thing. So I've worked for Mike Lindell off and on for a while now on election integrity. I've been a communications director for him. Of course, that's dependent on donations and funding. So my position has kind of come and gone with the public's interest on the topic. I've been working for about 4 years for the Epic Times doing contract work. Back shortly after we moved here, they offered me a full-time position, and I said, okay, I just need to finish this one contract, and I'll keep contracting with you until that's done with this other entity, and then I'll take the full-time job. Well, I came back and they said, we're sorry, we can't offer you that anymore. I found out later it was because the Chinese Communist Party had attacked them. So, they're always trying to attack the Epic Times, but so severely that they had to put a whole lot of money toward legal and they had to cut back. So, this weaponization against the American people, this lawfare has affected us. And so Sam and I have gotten together. We formed this Parents Demanding Justice Alliance. And
Before
through,
we get before we get into
yeah,
that,
sure.
Kelly,
A long
um,
story.
yes, it is a long but very intriguing story. It is your life, and I just cannot believe you had been through all this. I mean, I had read some of your background, but I didn't have all of these details. This is like a nightmare. It's just crazy.
Imagine someone who's publicly going online threatening to kill your family. You know who he is. Um, just constantly, consistently, very real threats that the FBI should have investigated. Talk about being a domestic terrorist. And the guy takes you and your family to court and tries to sue you for cyber harassment. I mean, unreal. It's just unreal. And Tucson, people say, "Well, is that really Arizona?" I say, "Well, Tucson is a communist city. The mayor, Regina Romero, is literally a member of the Communist Party."
Wow.
So, really, honestly, we face some of the worst of it. But eh, before you continue, I just want to say, Sam and I and others have used my story
Right.
as an example, kind of the poster child of what's happened to parents across the country.
Right. Right. And it's extremely bold and courageous of you to continue in this work. But I'm so glad that you have, and I have a ton of questions. But before we get to them, we need to take a short break. And when we come back, I'd like to ask you more about what you and Sam are doing when your press conference on Capitol Hill and many more things. But give us just a moment and don't go away. I'll be right back with my interview with Kelly Walker right after this. Government school enrollment is declining in America. Parents are increasingly taking kids out of failing schools and seeking alternatives like private and homeschooling. Despite this drop in enrollment, school spending and hiring continue to grow, according to a new report by the Manhattan Institute. Increasing the budgets for this failed system not only hurts taxpayers, but it's a real slap in the face to parents who choose to fund their own children's education. This disparity doesn't have to continue. State legislators can align funding strictly based on a per-pupil basis, following benchmarks such as average tuition rates for local private schools. This approach would reduce spending based on enrollment and lead to lower taxes. Tune in next week for more insights from U.S. parents involved in education, and connect with us at USPI on X and Facebook. To join the movement, visit uspi.org. Welcome back to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. With me today is Kelly Walker, founder of Freedom Talk and co-chair of Parents Demanding Justice Alliance, which recently delivered evidence to Congress showing how federal authorities are targeting parents who speak up at school board meetings. Kelly, tell us about this 35-page dossier you submitted to the Federal Weaponization Working Group in Congress. So what does it contain, and why is it significant?
Sure. So on the heels of last year forming a loose coalition, Sam and I got to talking, and Sam had talked about wanting to do something for various groups of Americans across the country who've been targeted, and we decided together to
Can I
focus
interrupt you just a
on.
second?
Sure, sure,
Just for our audience
sure,
sake, let's tell them a little bit about who Sam Sorbo is. You want to do that?
sure. Well, Sam Sorbo was probably most widely known as Kevin Sorbo's wife. He was a love interest on the Hercules show. Great actress, now a filmmaker, film producer with Sorbo Studios. You can visit sorbostudios.com. And just a tireless advocate for homeschooling, for educational reform, and just, she's become a very good friend, I'd say slightly older sister to me. And so Sam and I have been talking. She's been amazing and wonderful. She has a heart for this topic. So we've decided to form the Parents Demanding Justice Alliance. I created a logo and some materials on that. So it's a grassroots movement. And Seek Smith from Mom Army and Dad Army has joined. Lisa Ricard, she and her husband produce Andrew Magazine, and we've just been adding allies all along the way. So ended up going to Washington D.C. to be on an NTD, which NTD is a news arm of the Epic Times, to be on an interview. And Representative Andy Ogles from Tennessee was on that, and Sam Sorbo and I were on that, and it was a great 15-minute interview. You can watch it at realfreedomtalk.com on the weaponization page there. And we had a meeting set up to meet again with Representative Eli Crane from Arizona. And I felt going out there, I think there's more to this trip. I think there's more of a reason why we're going out there. Well, it turns out, Sherry, that after the NTD interview, which was fantastic, and you can imagine, uh, we're talking to Steve Lance, and to the back of him is this beautiful view of the Capitol building. And that night, Sam and Kevin go to an event. I think it was some sort of dinner or film premiere. And who should they sit next to but Vince Haley, who is President Trump's domestic policy advisor. Really nice guy, homeschooling family, by the way.
Mm.
And Sam texted me that night and said, Kelly, be ready because tomorrow at 11 a.m. we're going to the White House. And I thought, what? I just like, this is great. What a pleasant text to get at night. And so we go over there, we go through all the security, and it's just unreal. Me and Sam and Lisa go in, and we go in the West Wing, and we're waiting to go into Vince's office, and who should come by but Paula White and another lady, I can't remember her name, but and Lisa knew them. I think Sam did as well, but we talked to them a little bit. And then we go and sit down in Vince's office, and who should stop by to get his coat that he forgot but Ed Martin, the chair, well, let's see, the director of the Trump's weaponization working group. And Sam and my friend Alex Newman had already been talking to Ed Martin. But the beautiful thing was, Sam thought that Ed only wanted to meet with her, but we found out because he was there in person, he met me and Lisa. He said, no, no, I want all of you to come by. So in the same day, we go into the White House, have a great meeting with Vince Haley. And then in the afternoon, we go to the DOJ, which is kind of the belly of the beast. This is the arm of the government that has made our lives so difficult. So we said similar things to both Vince and Ed. We told a little bit of my story, and we said this is indicative of a lot of parents across the country. This is a huge problem. Merrick Garland, the Biden administration, deliberately, fraudulently targeted parents, and I have a lot of the information because I have the research skills. I've gotten FOIA emails and everything else. I have to say, Vince sat there and gave us undivided attention. He was riveted. His assistant knocked on the door that his next appointment was here, and he said, "Make them wait."
Hmm.
So I mean, this was very heartening. And then when we talked to Ed and his assistant, his chief of staff, he listened as well, and he basically said, "This is a really compelling story, Kelly, but I need to know that you're not the only one." And I said, do you know of others? I said, "Oh yeah, we have plenty." And I said, "Why don't we get together a list and some testimonies?" So we ended up putting out a call through Sam's channels and mine and everywhere we could. And of course, we had some we knew that we added in, but we started getting parents coming to us, emailing us. Seek Smith put a form online, which again, you can see that form on the weaponization page at realfreedomtalk.com. So if you were targeted for being a concerned parent, go there and click on that form or email realfreedomtalk@gmail.com. So we worked very, very hard after that Washington meeting, especially Sam and I. Everybody was pitching in, but Sam and I did most of the heavy lifting. And we put together this dossier with an introduction and talking about the problem and why it happened and who was involved. And we have testimonies from over 40 parents, and it's growing because we keep getting more at least every day or two, we get more. And we laid out just a very nice document. And so we scheduled a press conference with Representative Andy Ogles, who's been, he's been involved. He and Eli and some others have been involved from the very beginning, very aware, very concerned about this issue. So Andy sponsored it. At first, we wanted to have it on the steps of the DOJ, but there was a whole convoluted process to do that. So Andy's staffer, Giancarlo, said, well, why don't we have it on the Triangle on the east side of the Capitol? That's where we often hold our pressers. So they sponsored it. We had two parents from our dossier come out. Also, Sharona Bishop, who works for Mike Lindell, who had her family door kicked down by the FBI. Not kicked down with a battering ram. It was unlocked, but they knocked it down with a battering ram. Came in with guns drawn, handcuffed her and her husband in front of their kids. I mean, the stories that you'll read in the dossier are just conscience shocking. You're not going to believe, as egregious as things have been the last 4 or 5 years, you're still going to be shocked at just how bad some things have been. So we had two parents plus, you know, Sharona and I both are parents who were weaponized against in a very severe manner. We had the representatives from Moms for America, Moms for Liberty. We had, oh gosh, Seek Smith was there. And unfortunately, Andy Ogle's flight got canceled, like I think it was 4 times, and he wasn't able to make it. But Andy Biggs subbed in for him, which is great. Andy knows the story. I know Andy from Arizona. His sister and brother-in-law. We talked with them often. They came to our coffee shop. So the event turned out very good. We got a good amount of media coverage. It was live streamed. You can watch the live streams on realfreedomtalk.com by NTD News, Epic Times. Steve Bannon had it live streamed. Lindell TV, some of the main media were there too, and it was a great ceremony. And we put forth a message, and we had already given the dossier to Ed Martin's office and Vince's office, but it was like the formal introducing of it. So we're here, and while we were still in DC, Sam and I went on numerous interviews, especially Sam. You know, she's got the name recognition, but we went on John Solomon's show, which was fantastic in the studio. John was great, very sympathetic, said he wants to have us back. He also said he's going to talk personally to President Trump about it. While we were there, we met Brian Glenn, and I introduced Sam to Brian Glenn. He's working on bringing this to Pam Bondi. Steve Bannon interviewed Sam again. Gosh, we went on so many shows, and I'm posting those all on Real Freedom Talk. So by the way, my flight was canceled too, so I ended up throwing the family in the van and driving 11 hours in the middle of the night, doing an all-nighter to get there, and then going on all these interviews. And as we were driving back, well, several things happened, Sherry. First of all, as you know, Trump got the green light from the Supreme Court to start firing people in the Department of Education. Then we had our press conference. Then Catalina texted me after the press conference and said, "Hey, did you hear that the I'm forgetting the name of it now. The teachers unions. What's that acronym?
NEA?
Their charters being. Yes, thank you. The NEA. We got too many acronyms running through my head. The NEA charter is up for review. I'm not. I need to find out what happened with that. But then on the way home, this news breaks through Breitbart that America First Legal has given the smoking gun that showed that Merrick Garland absolutely went after the parents, colluded with local law enforcement,
Right.
everything that I pretty much knew, but now it's just really out there.
Yeah,
So
the
here we
timing
are.
the timing of
Uh,
that was impeccable. I mean, that had to be God that intervened at that time. I knew that you and Sam were doing the press conference in DC, and at the same time, um, this came out, and we used it as our news release for that week, and actually did 2 interviews this week on that topic. And in each interview that I've done, I think I've done 3 actually. I've talked about you and your alliance, and I've promoted, parents to go on your website,
thank you.
and if they also have been victims, because I know even our Illinois PI president has been a victim. I mean, he was on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate list, I think it was called, and we were too. Our organization was
Yeah,
too. Moms for Liberty was, and so he got detained at an airport and couldn't
Catalina,
travel.
Strawberry,
He lost his
yeah.
job, so he has a story too. So I know there's many parents out there who have been affected, not I don't think as severely as you have, but nonetheless,
And
their
we
rights
want
have
to
been violated.
us.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and there are levels of severity. We want all of these people. You go to realfreedomtalk.com. We'll add you to the dossier. It's a living document. Catalina Stube was also targeted by the Southern Poverty Law Center, for Moms for Liberty. And
Right.
thank you for sharing that. And by the way, I've been funding my own travel. All of us have been funding our own travel. I've had a Give Send Go account for a long time. I haven't wanted this to be about building an organization, and people have donated a little, and it's really helped, just made it possible. But Sam just recently offered to fold it into a nonprofit, and actually she said I can rename it Parents Demanding Justice, and I balked at first because I don't want people to get the impression we're doing this for money. But then I thought, well, if people donate, now they can get, a tax credit for that. So if you would like to donate, just go to realfreedomtalk.com, go to that weaponization page, and you'll see a link, and it will go to the nonprofit under Sam, and we'll use it to help with travel and different things. But Sherry, if you can imagine it, like, I'm a father of five. We're still struggling to get our lives back together. We've been through some real hardship because when the federal government puts the full weight of their powers on you to try to destroy you, it has an effect. And here I am, one of the parents who spoke at the press conference contacted me, and then I put him in touch with Sam. This person, she has received uh, retribution for speaking at the press conference. I mean, she came home to just this horrible situation. Their family's very, very stressed. And we've done all these things. All this has been out there. And I don't want to be too critical, but nobody's really done anything yet. I haven't seen a statement from Ed Martin's office. I haven't, Pam Bondi hasn't contacted us yet. I think President Trump's aware of it, and I understand that an executive order that we drafted for review is in the White House. And I know government can go slowly, but it's very slowly for these people, including my family, who've been suffering for years under severe oppression. And this parent came to me just very anxious. And so imagine this, Sherry. Here we have a government that's appointed people to take care of these people, and they're coming to me, an unemployed slash underemployed father, asking me for help and saying, "Thank God you're here. I finally have somebody to talk to." I mean, I can look. I can write. I'm a journalist. I can go on shows. We can get a lot of public pressure, but ultimately, I'm drawing the line right now. We're not the parents suggesting action. We're the parents demanding action.
Amen.
And I'm getting to the point where I want to start asking some questions. I want to ask where Pam Bondi is. Kash Patel, in his confirmation hearings, told Senator Josh Hawley he promised he's going to look into this and investigate it. We haven't seen anything yet, and we're citizens. Sam fortunately wasn't a target, but she's worked just as hard as if she were. So I'm actually meeting with Sam and the team later today, and we want to be cordial. We want to work hand in hand. But imagine this, Sherry. You walk into the Department of Justice that has made your life hell for years. You talk to people and you just hope, hey, I think these guys are on my side. Sam knows Ed Martin. My friend Alex Newman knows Ed Martin. I think he's got a good heart, but we need to get this in the forefront. Like, J6 people have been given some relief. And I'll
Right.
tell you something, Sherry, like, a lot of people might not know it. You can see the story on realfreedomtalk.com, but uh, a young single mother had been arrested at J6. She was pregnant at the time. She had her baby shower at our coffee shops, where I first met Grant Stinchfield at our coffee shop. Flash forward 2.5 years later, we're in Tennessee. We find out she's having to go to DC for sentencing. She doesn't know what to do with her 2.5-year-old boy. Her mother's antagonistic, wanted to try to take him with CPS. She could have lost her child to the state. Without hesitation, we couldn't afford it, but we flew Andrea out to sign power of attorney, and we were ready to take little Henry in our house for 4 years because that's what she was looking at.
Mm.
So we're well past the baby toddler stage. We've got this little boy in our house, and Felicia said, "I don't know what I would have done without you." And it turned out, after she went through the sentencing, we ended up keeping Henry for only about 2 months, which is hard. It's hard when you're not used to toddlers anymore. Lovely, sweet kid, but toddler terrible news, all the
Mm.
whole thing. So, and so then she was able to reunite with her son. She still is having trouble getting a job because although she's gotten a pardon, people still see them. They still have a criminal record. That needs taken care of. But and little Henry still says, "I want to see my family. I want to see my family."
Mm.
So the American people have been coming together. We've been helping one another out, but we need this administration. Look, they jumped on when people were attacking Elon Musk's businesses. They jump on things for high profile people. They need to look at the average everyday American and say justice is long overdue for these people. It's long overdue.
Amen.
And just because these people are not in a government position or celebrities,
Right.
that's all the more reason to help. They have nobody fighting for them right now
That's right.
except for us. Okay? I wanna see a statement from Ed Martin's office saying, "We support this. We see what the AFL has done." Sam and I have talked to the AFL. I talked with them with Sharona yesterday, so we talked to them twice. I'm hoping we can work with them. But what we want, and I know this is one of your questions, what we want is that executive order from President Trump that's not only gonna vindicate and exonerate these parents, but it's going to honor them. And it's also going to figure out restitution because the government is supposed to be here to protect our life, liberty, and property. When they take those things away, they have an obligation to restore them. I'm
Amen.
not looking to get rich. I don't really want to go do lawsuits, but I want the government to say, "Yep, mea culpa. The government did this. The DOJ was wrong. Everybody knows it now. It's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to restore Kelly and these other parents to the level of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness they had before this happened." It's not a request, it's an obligation. And I think President Trump, he's a go-getter, he's a doer. I think when he's fully aware of this, I think he's going to do it. And Sam brought up, a brilliant talking point. She said, "President Trump, you're the parent in chief.
Mm.
We want you to honor these parents, not only vindicate them, but hold them up for high praise because they stood their ground against the full weight of a rogue, treasonous regime and stood for our kids, and they paid the price for it." And I'll tell you something, a lot of these parents, my wife and I included, deal with PTSD. I mean, it is Donald Trump, of all people, should know what it's like to have the entire system weaponized against you.
For
So
sure.
we want to get this to I'm talking to Brian Glenn later today. You might know Brian. He did, well, he works for Real America's Voice now. We've been talking with John Solomon, who's been wonderful. But we need to bump this up to the level of top priority because justice is long overdue for these people. We have one case in our dossier of someone committing suicide because of the pressure. We have a divorce that, this pressure was an element in that. And by the way, if you'd like to see the dossier, you can go to realfreedomtalk.com. We've got a version where some of the names have been redacted, but it's really interesting, Sherry, because I asked all the parents, I said, "We want to put out a redacted version." Hey, look, you have it. You read it.
Yes, sir.
Some of these parents said emphatically, "Do not redact my name." And they're still being targeted, and
Mm.
this needs to end. If we as a republic can't afford a basic protection of our people and restore them when their government has deprived them of their most fundamental natural rights, then we don't have a government. We have a regime, and this needs to change.
Amen.
Thank you, by the way, for all this. I understand you've looked it all over.
Oh,
It's an
yes,
honor.
yes. And I want to just say, you've told us so much, and I know there's more to be told, and we've gone kind of long, but I think this is so important. So I definitely want to have you back. I want to follow this story. I want to talk with you more about this, and I'll tell you that the interviews that I did on the topic of American First Legal's FOIA and all the information that came out that is now solid evidence that the that Garland had absolutely colluded with the National School Boards Association. It's all evidence now. So when I'm doing these interviews, 2 of the 3 interviews ended with the host asking me, "So what kind of accountability is there going to be?" They hit me with that question, and of course, I knew that you had requested an executive order, and that's a start. But that is not nearly all that needs to happen because you talked about justice and relief and restoration and how the J6ers, have been restored to some extent, and even the female athletes have been restored to some extent. It's taking place on the college
Yeah,
campuses because Trump is pushing back, and they're giving the awards back to those female athletes that they should have gone to originally. And I agree with you. This parent issue, justice for parents, is should be preeminent, and even if it's not a celebrity, it is a politically hot topic. And if President Trump and the other leaders in this country want to win the midterm elections, they ought to jump all over an issue like this. I mean, it's
I
absurd,
know. I
and
know
I hope
Riley Gaines.
they will be.
I know Riley Gaines personally. Like uh, young daughter, I colored pictures with her. We had lunch. I know Chloe Cole. I'm very happy for them. But what the public has done is made a superstar out of Riley Gaines. I'm not saying that's not deserved, but these parents, like we were suffering this before Riley Gaines ever swam in a competition. Before a lot of people who are in office even ran for elections, and we're happy for her. We're happy for the J6ers getting at least a partial pardon. But when we saw the pardon of J6ers, my wife texted me and she said, "I'm so happy for Felicia and some other people we know." And she said, "But at the same time, I'm sitting here crying because I hope someday that can be us too, because
Amen.
I have a conviction. I have a warrant for my arrest in Tucson
Wow.
because I refused to go to jail. Jennifer from Sahuarita has a warrant for her arrest, even though she went to jail. Why does she have a warrant? Because she refused to write a letter of apology to the principal who did this to her.
Oh my gosh.
And we're like under the radar, but parents are the lifeblood of this nation. And if we can help Riley Gaines for participating in sport, I don't want to make light of it, but it's just a sport. It can be a career for some people, and it's important. And men should not be competing in women's sports. And I have supported that. I've had Riley on my show a couple times. I'm a staunch advocate for that. And I'm not comparing, but what I'm saying is this is on the administration to say, look, we're going for the big shiny things, but we've got some work to do, because maybe, school parents who have bills and stress and try to manage their weight and everything else, maybe they're not sexy, they're not elite athletes, they're not superstars, they're not politicians, but they matter. And this is long overdue. Think about it. I first got arrested in 2020,
Hmm.
and I met Riley in, I think, 2023 when this was all fresh. I'm very happy for Riley. I'm very happy for my friend Chloe Cole. I'm very happy that this issue's been addressed. But let's stop ignoring what happened to the parents and pretending like it didn't happen, because these people are actively suffering. I don't want to see another suicide. I don't want to see families go into poverty. We already know the government did this, and it is unconscionable that this isn't front and center. This needs to be on Pam Bondi's desk and
Yes.
Harmeet's, and they need to be fighting hard. And I
Right.
get it; they have a lot on
And some real
this. There's
criminals.
no
I'd just like to add some real criminals need to go to jail, because that's what we're looking at here. Is when you weaponize the
yes,
government against law-abiding citizens, that's criminal. And these people need to have warrants issued on them. And so, Kelly, like I said, I really, really want to have you back on, because I know there's more to tell, more to talk about, and this is an ongoing situation. But I need to take another quick break. And when I come back, I'd like to ask you two questions that I ask all of my guests before we end the show. So don't go away. I'll be back with my interview with Kelly Walker right after this. The most important duty of parents is to defend and protect their children. Children deserve a wholesome upbringing under the care of family and friends who love them. They deserve an opportunity to think freely, to learn absolute truths, to appreciate beauty and goodness. But the government schools are pitting children against their parents and undermining their family's religion, morality, and values. Children at very young ages are being systematically brainwashed and are being taught critical Marxist theories that seek to divide and conquer America from within. We believe that children deserve better than government schools, which are not teaching them to read, write, and do math, but are indoctrinating them with woke ideology, breeding an army of mindless activists. Get your children out of public schools like the building is on fire, because it is. Tune in next week for more insights from U.S. parents involved in education, and connect with us at USPI on X and Facebook. To join the movement, visit uspie.org. Welcome back to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. With me today has been founder of Freedom Talk and co-chair of Parents Defending Justice Alliance, Kelly Walker. This has been an amazing conversation, and we end each episode by asking our guests two questions. So, Kelly, can you tell me, what are your biggest concerns about what's happening in education today, and what gives you hope?
my two biggest concerns about education today are the fact that the American Communists, the Marxists, and including the Chinese Communist Party. And believe me, I've worked for the top two anti-Chinese communist organizations, the Epoch Times and the New Federal State of China. They've infiltrated our schools. So the public school setting is a perfect place to indoctrinate children. And if you know anything about communism, they go for the children. They have a long range view, and this is very, very hard to control. I'm absolutely an advocate of homeschooling. My kids who have been homeschooled versus my older kids who are in public schools, they're far and above. I mean, they're getting such a better quality education. My concern is that parents may not feel like they can do it, like they can accomplish it. But talk to Sam Sorbo. Go visit her website. She'll say the number one predictor of academic success is parental involvement. So you kind of can't go wrong. Your kids are going to learn. Get them reading, let them experience real life, and they'll be well prepared.
Well, and that's why we named our organization United States Parents Involved in Education, because that's been a fact for as long as I've been involved in education policy, which is longer than I care to admit because it'd be revealing my age. But yes, it's always been a fact, and we understand it to be true. But unfortunately, government schools only want you to be involved as far as being involved with the PTA to help raise money and make sure your kid has their homework in on time. And beyond that, check your parent credentials at the door. And I mean, that's been going on since my children were in school 20 years ago. So I just want to thank you again, Kelly, for being with us here today and being a voice for truth and having the courage to face all this intimidation. It's just amazing what you've been through. You're a hero in my eyes, and I want our viewers, our audience, to go to your website, realfreedomtalk.com, and consider contributing to this very important organization, the work that they're doing, and supporting Kelly and his family and helping them to do more, because we want to see justice and relief and restoration to these families. And we'll be praying for you, Kelly. We thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just want to add, people say, why have you endured all this? Why have you done this? You're not getting paid for this. And I think Sam Sorbo and some of the others involved would say the same thing. The reason is love. We love people. We hate to see them suffering. We love our country. So it is a labor of love. Any donations are absolutely helpful. It's been amazing. Sometimes I don't even know how I'm going to get to Washington, D.C. or pay the bills, and something always turns out. But, if we're going to make America great again, we have to take care of the least in our society, or we're going to be like ancient Israel. The lesson is, if there is no justice in the land, a nation's going to fail. And I'm getting off on a limb a little bit here, but if we don't take care of the persecuted and the lowly in our society, our nation may not be long to endure. I think we're getting a second chance, and we should be careful not to blow it.
Amen. Very well said. So thank you to our audience for tuning in to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. If you found today's discussion eye-opening, which I'm sure you have, please share this episode with a friend and give us a 5-star rating and subscribe to stay informed. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, and visit us at uspie.org to join the movement. Until next time.
U.S. Parents Involved in Education is a nonprofit coalition dedicated to restoring local control of education and parental authority. By empowering parents to reclaim responsibility for their children's learning and encouraging states to move away from federal influence, USPI seeks to create a culture where parents are the primary decision makers in education and schools support families without the burden of federal mandates. If you want to start a state or regional USPI chapter in your area, please visit uspie.org and complete the brief questionnaire in the chapters section.